This is Making AI Approachable. Our third webinar focuses on the cost, packaging, and pricing of AI. Thanks everybody who has joined with us today. My name is Mikko Peltola. I'm from ACX, and I have Petri Salonen from TELLUS with me here today.
Hello.
We're going to deliver this presentation for you in collaboration between ACX and TELLUS. ACX focuses on the design and engineering, and TELLUS on the strategy. We're going to give a brief introduction of our companies and then dive into the content. So at this point, Petri, I'll hand over for you.
Thanks, Mikko. So TELLUS has been working with ISVs, independent software vendors, and organizations, end-user organizations for the past 17 years. And one of the things that we've been focusing on is really to look at the solution development from a lifecycle perspective. So from envisioning, business design, software solution pricing, packaging, and it's really exciting to be partnered with ACX because we have never been focused on the actual delivery, the design side of things, and the actual engineering. So we together will be able to deliver an end-to-end solution. So very happy to be here today.
Thanks, Petri. And then ACX, we are a boutique consultancy. We focus on the customer experience. We are all product makers. Here you can see the founders and the leaders of the company. We have presence in North America as well as in Europe. In terms of content, we help progressive companies, and especially with the futuristic technologies like extended reality and artificial intelligence. How we help them is through design and engineering. So we cover research and insights, visual UX design, and then front-end, back-end development, whatever goes into designing and implementing these futuristic solutions. Now, let's jump to the topic of the day. So the cost, packaging, and pricing of AI. If you have been in our webinars before, our first webinar was about introduction to AI with some easily approachable examples. The second webinar was about customizing the AI, how to build it. We are going to recap some small segments of those, but if you want to get a further understanding of those topics, the recordings of the first two webinars are available for you. This slide may look familiar for you. It is the triangle of AI. In the bottom end, you have the most approachable part, the solutions like ChatGPT that you probably are familiar with. On the top end of the pyramid, there are the most complex cases, so building self-driving cars, curing cancer. Since our focus today is making AI approachable, we're not going to touch that top end of the pyramid, but rather building from the bottom end. The figures on the right-hand side, we're not going to recap all of those, but we assume, the industry assumes that AI is going to have a fundamental impact on how we work. And there are two means of getting there. If we start growing from the ChatGPT, that's good for playing around with words, but there are a number of pre-built AI applications that you can use, and those probably provide you the best bang for buck. They are quite cheap and can improve your processes and your work a lot. There's another angle with these pre-built apps that Petri will cover towards the end of the presentation. So if you're planning to bring some AI offering to the market, then you need to think about the pricing and packaging, and Petri will touch on that today. Pre-built AI applications may not always be the right solution for you. You may need to incorporate your own data. You may want to bring the solutions as part of your processes, and then we're looking at the custom AI solutions. And this is really the bulk of today's presentation, the cost of the pre-built AI apps and then the custom AI solutions. So since we want to make this approachable, let's give some very easy examples, and let's start with what not to do. So this is the crazy train. You probably hear people saying that let's do these kind of things, and we give reasons why not to do. So firstly, when you are starting in your AI journey, you don't know how much processing power you're going to need. And that makes the cloud services an ideal starting point for you. So you don't know the scale that you're going to operate. Your needs are very uneven. In the training phase, you probably need much more capacity than when you're running the system. So Microsoft Azure, AWS, and the other cloud service providers are a good solution here. NVIDIA is the company behind the most successful or the most popular GPUs, the graphical processing units. They are probably the hottest stock in the world this year, and they're like delivery sign backlog. So we don't recommend spending tens of thousands on a solution that you don't need, how much you need it for. Secondly, since they sign back order, it's going to take months, at least weeks, probably months before you can get the units. Whereas going with the cloud service provider who can give you access to the needed processing for a few dollars per hour. Second thing not to do, don't build your own large language model. So if your engineering team goes crazy and they says that let's start from scratch, it costs millions to build this. The heavy lifting has been done for you. Don't go there. In our second webinar, we did explore how you can further fine-tune and build on these large language models. What are the good ways of doing that? But don't go all in with starting from scratch. And the third thing, since this is such a hot area, there is the resources, the people who can do this are in high demand. So I looked at Glassdoor, and the cost in US, the salary cost of machine learning engineer, data scientist, senior developers are in the $150,000 per year range. So building a team of 3 costs you $500,000, and there is probably other opportunities for them as well that may be more interesting. So it's better to start building with people who know how to help you rather than trying to go all in from the get-go. So then what to do? Pre-built AI is a good starting point. It probably provides you the best bang for buck. There are 3 examples here, and these are in the visual space, not so much in the language space. So with the Adobe Firefly, you can, with your own words, describe what you want to change in a picture, whether it's a background or clothes or colors or whatnot. Move AI records your movement and then translates that to computer-generated graphic or another creature that moves in the screen. Viscom provides like AI solution that takes your sketching and translates that into a high-resolution image. And there are literally thousands of these. So when you start thinking, how can you infuse AI into your processes, into your work, it's a good starting point to try to understand what comes available prepackaged. Now, why is it important? Firstly, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Of course, you can build a lot of stuff yourself, but if it's already been done, that's a good starting point. Secondly, it's good to know where your competition is. Has your competition already disrupted their ways of working? So are you staying competitive without these kind of tools? And if you are planning to bring a solution like this into the market, understanding what is the market price. So how much can you invest in building the product and how much can you make with licensing that? And again, Petri will cover pricing and packaging at the end of the presentation. On the right-hand side, you see another example. So you can extend images. So you ask AI to imagine what, generate content to the sides of the image. And if you look at the images we use for this webinar series, those are all generated by Claudio with the Photoshop and with this generative expansion. So then the costing side, and for the pre-built AI, it's pretty simple. So there are some other example solutions here that are not so visual, that are more around text. And the pricing tends to have hover on some tens of dollars per user per month. So if you go to ChatGPT 4 or the Pro version, you can license that. It's $20 per user per month. The Move AI comes to $30 per user per month, and the Viscom $50. So of course, if you start paying these licenses for everybody who wants to toy around with them in your business, it may not be a good business case. But if you can help somebody be more creative or faster in their creation, these costs are something that your business case can probably carry easily.
So Mikko, in this case, I mean,
Yep.
These guys, all these cases that you've shown, like Viscom, Move, they have had to define the pricing to make sure that there's value for the users using these
Yes.
services. So that's what I'm kind of covering. What are the aspects of that when you build a solution and put that into a commercial marketplace?
Very much so, yeah. And it's a good point, Petri. So since this is so hot market, there's a lot of land grabbing happening here. So many people are building solutions, pricing it low so that they can get the followers and users up.
Yeah.
Considerations here. What's the actual cost of taking the system into use? You need to train people, they need to change their processes. you might want to integrate it into their process like technically or it's just like instructions. And then of course, if this is a commercial offering, what's the cost of the go-to-market? So AI is not a product and product doesn't sell on its own, so you need to still think the whole 9 yards there. So then let's move on to the custom-built AI solutions. This is where it gets more complex. So you could look at analysis systems, virtual assistants, process optimization. First cost element to consider is that AI is not a product. So the normal product or IT system development costs apply in this case as well. So whether you're taking the CRM system into use or budgeting tool or BI or whatever, you faced some costs as part of that, and it's no different with AI. We're going to look at the AI development cost in the coming slides. And then one thing that people often forget is the lifecycle management cost. So like every product, there is some lifecycle management cost. In AI specifically, it may mean that you need to refresh the underlying data if that changes, or you may want to change the engine under the hood when the AI models get more advanced. What you want to pay attention here is that what are the big ticket items? There are many cost elements. They may be new for you. What should you pay attention to? And second, what is the predictability of those cost elements? So where they are predictable and where there is risk that could be more expensive than you thought. So let's start with the large language models. The pricing of the LLMs is measured in tokens. On the right-hand side, you see this rainbow-colored sentence. It represents 11 tokens. So one token can be one letter, one word, or something in between. We covered this more in detail in our second webinar, so you can dive there if you want more. 1,000 tokens, which is typical unit of pricing, covers about one plus page of text or 750 words. If we look at the OpenAI token costs, you see that they are fractions of cents per 1K tokens. What you should pay attention to is there's still big difference here. So if we give a relative cost of 1 to the cheapest model, the most expensive models are 300 times more expensive. Not an issue if you control the volume and the volume is low, but if you don't control the volume or the volume is high, then of course this becomes more of an issue. So looking at the high-end example, if you take the most expensive model, the GPT-4, and it can take 40 pages of text as an input, as an output, you're looking at the $6 cost for one prompt and response at the maximum. So while you look at fractions of cents, it can get expensive if you don't know what you're doing or somebody's like maliciously gaming the system. Then moving on to the training of the AI. So how do you train the AI is these example pairs. So you give a prompt, like what is your favorite color? And a response, my super favorite color is blue. And when you have a number of these prompts and responses, you can use it to train the AI, not just to remember these, but to understand how to answer similar kind of questions. To do the training, OpenAI provides some guidance on the best practice. So they say that for it to make any sense, you need to provide at least a few hundred high-quality examples. And then if that's not enough, if you want to double the performance increase linearly, so that if you double the number of examples, then you move on to the next level of the accuracy. So these were kind of technical details you need to understand so that we can dive further into the costing. So let's look at like you want to build a system, you don't want to build a full new large language model, but you want to fine tune that. What people normally think about is building and training of the AI, which is a relevant cost. If we take 3 resources, each of them works 2 weeks or 1 sprint, and let's say that they cost $1,200 a day, you're looking at some tens of thousands of dollars. And with this, you get like 1 person for 3 sprints or 3 persons for 1 sprint. So not a huge amount of work, that's the cost. What people often don't think about is the data collection and formatting cost, and this is probably the most important cost element for you. It could be that you control the cost. It might be that the information is in-house, you have full access to it, or it could be that on the other end of the spectrum, you need to collect the information from partners or customers, open source, huge variance. Some data sets are available from Hugging Face for free. On the other hand, you might spend days or weeks trying to convince your marketing VP or IT VP to kind of work with you to get this data done. cost is really unknown, big swing factor there. When you have the test data, you need to vet that. You remember that OpenAI example, the recommendation that they are preferably human vetted, high quality samples. And if you take like 2 minutes per example to vet these samples, so you need to reject some of them, correct some of them, approve some of them, and say $1,200 a day, with a few hundred examples, you're talking about a few $1,000s. But every doubling increases the accuracy. So like if you start to go into thousands of examples, the cost also ramps up to tens of thousands. What is not so relevant cost in many cases is the token costs. So since the cost is fractions of cents, and you only need like some thousands of examples or even hundreds, one new concept here is the epoch. So it means how many times you run your data through the AI model so that it can adjust the probabilities in the different cells. So 4 is a good starting point. Let's budget 10 times, 10 epochs, quite typical. So we're still looking at only hundreds of dollars. So compared to the other cost, especially data processing cost, this is often not a concern for you. Good. Another way of doing the fine tuning, and I tried to find like external examples. So AWS has provided this example. There's a URL at the bottom of the page. So in their case study, they used 6 hours of GPU. They got it for very cheap. I added 100% overhead for all the other IT needs that you may have, but their example came to like $20 cost. That's of course the kind of most extreme example that they could provide. Approaching the same kind of fine-tuning costs from another angle, if you take 1 week of GPU usage, you run like a typical 8 GPU system that costs like $32 per hour, and add also the 100% overhead. Looking at a few $1,000s, not insignificant cost, but again, compared to the data cost, not a huge cost. And then on the high end, of course, there is risk. So if you go crazy and you buy the kind of big GPU machine that costs $400 an hour, and you don't know what you are doing, you're consuming that time, you let it run there, you could be ramping this up to thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Again, highly dependent on whether you know what you're doing or not. And this is not totally imaginary example. So we at ACX have built a location-based app, and it's up and running, and it's optimized, and it costs us $47 a month. The AWS bill is $47 a month. We had a customer case with not similar, but like similar resource needs for it, and it wasn't optimized in any way, and it was like peaking at $4,000 a month. No need for that cost, but it wasn't just configured correctly. There were no budgets, no alerts, and so forth. So if you know what you're doing, it can be cost effective, but there is some risk to pay attention to. So this is a good image that I have borrowed from Cobus Graining from his blog. I think it visualizes where people assume that the cost is and where it really is. So testing and implementing a new model, the heavy lifting has been done. You can find the models, whether you go to the Hugging Face, or you can find like Azure provides like a full toolkit for you to run these. The cost is really not that high. Where you do see a big item like cost is the data. So collecting, formatting, validating the data. And then the second thing that people often don't consider is the iterative process. So you have this lifecycle management cost, and your data may need to be refreshed constantly because your environment changes. Or you may realize that you want to tweak your AI model further. You want to swap the underlying engine because there's something more effective and more cost-effective available. So this is where the costs really are, where people assume that they are. So to summarize this section, the real cost of building AI is measured in hours, not in tokens. That's one takeaway that you should walk out of this meeting with. So let's look at a couple of case studies then. So firstly, let's imagine a case where you want a simple access to a database. A company, for example, wants to trial how to explore AI. They have 5 internal users, and these users need to get information from a customer database, but they are not experts in querying that. So we want to build them like a large language, like natural language interface where they can ask the information they want without knowing anything about computing. Today they may be relying on somebody else like an IT, but that causes delays, and we want to automate the system. Let's assume like low usage, 10 daily queries per person, 5 users, 20 working days in a month, so 1,000 queries a month. So a simple flow chart how this would work. The system asks here in a pink text, what data would you like to get? User provides prompt, for example, find an address of Mikko Peltola. We use a front end that generates a request to ChatGPT or some other AI model that converts this natural language into an SQL query. Then we run that SQL query to the database, and we could provide the answer as it comes, or we could tweak that into more natural language model depending on the need. So very simple setup where we're using a large language model to convert the natural language into a query. So what is the cost here? The cost is very much headcount dependent. This is engineering work. The basic work is quite simple. It wasn't a complex thing. But what easily becomes like, what is the risk factor here is that there are a lot of things to consider. So like, do you want to limit the access right to this system? What kind of front end do you want to build for this? Where is it getting this access to the database? Is the API available? Do we have access to the whole IT team where it's necessary? Who is going to approve this design? And then like a lot of testing. So you can build a model that works, but does it work in the corner cases? So the cost can be 25,000 or it can be much more depending on how ready your organization is to support this exercise and how much tweaking and fine-tuning you want to do there. Second example then, like we have a customer Q&A on a web page. Many of them are horrible at the moment. If you try those, they're outdated, not very flexible. So let's like play around with the idea of replacing one of those. Let's say 50 daily queries comes to 1,500 requests because this is run every day, 30 days a week. Here, the large language models, your ChatGPTs don't know the specifics of your company. So you need to be training, you need to be fine-tuning the model to understand the specifics of your company. Here we come then to questions like, okay, since this is customer facing, what happens if there is a peak load? Do we need to do some load balancing so that it's always up and running and provides good customer experience for the users? Since this is customer facing, what is the risk that somebody starts overusing the system? They either manually or like in an automated manner drive a large volume of traffic through your system. And you remember the example that like if you choose a very expensive large language model, it can be significant. So if you're talking about dollars per query and somebody all of a sudden runs like a massive amount of volume through your system, that's a risk item. Again, knowing what to do, you can set alerts, you can set budgets. So there is a way to mitigate this risk, but it is extra work to do there. You probably want to start from an A/B testing. So you have the old system in the background, and then you introduce a new system. You might even want to have the old system as the backup, but at some point you want to phase it out. You don't want to maintain both of the systems. So what are the relevant cost items here? The good news is that you own the data. It's your Q&A. You probably have all the information available on your website or somewhere else in the materials, and it should be accessible. The basic engineering is quite simple, but the same thing as previously. There is a lot of things that you can do there. So like who can maintain this model? Do you want all the changes locked there? Who's going to approve the front end and design that? You don't want to have a mobile front end and a web interface and a tablet interface, and so forth. And testing is something like building a system so that you can demo it's easy, but then testing it with different corner cases. So what happens if people ask unwanted questions through the QA or something that is not supposed to answer? How does the system behave in that kind of setup? The fine-tuned models carry a cost, some thousands of dollars. The model hosting, depending on the machine you use, may carry a cost. So you're looking at 50,000 and upwards, and the upwards can be a lot more. There are, of course, you should be looking at like the pre-packaged Q&A solutions. So they may be the right way of going here, the commercial offering. But if you want to learn, if you want to build, this is an example of what it could look like. So then let's look at the third example here, large language model, like in-house large language model. So ChatGPT is great for drafting emails, summarizing stuff. I use it on a daily basis. Many organizations have a concern that if they allow using that, or even if they don't allow, people may use it, what happens to the privacy of the data? Is that leaked somewhere? Like, should we build an in-house solution for that? Now, OpenAI and Azure, for example, do say that they are not using the prompts that we send to train their models, but it's still your data and your responsibility. So you may want to build something in-house. So let's think about a little bit bigger organization, 1,000 active users, and they're using 20 queries each. So 20,000 queries per day. And this doesn't mean that you are like working on 20 individual emails, so 20 times like writing a blog or something. You may be fine-tuning your idea and playing around with the large language model to get it absolutely right. We're not looking here at the project scope. Case 1 and 2 covered that, but let's look at the operations cost. So if we say that it's 2K tokens per query and like prompt and response, 21 working days per month. If you take the not fine-tuned model, DaVinci, for example, you would be looking at $17,000 a month. And if you remember, the OpenAI pricing works so that the fine-tuned model is 6 times more expensive, you would be looking at the $100,000 per month. Those start to be significant numbers, but remember that here we have 1,000 active users. So even with the fine-tuned model, it's $100 per user per month. And if you're improving the efficiency of their work, if they can do creative text, if they can answer emails better, if they can make better marketing material, again, the cost may be well justified, even though the total amount looks quite high. Good. So that was the cost part of the presentation. These examples were calculated with the cost generation tool. And if you are interested in that, please reach out to us and we can walk you through and fine-tune the tool for your needs. At this point, I will hand over to Petri, and he's going to walk us through the pricing and packaging. Petri, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mikko. If you turn on to the next slide. So like Mikko said, it's important to differentiate between the cost side of things and the potential revenue side of things, specifically in cases where if you want to build a solution that will be resold on the marketplace. TELLUS has been educating the most used industry standard business model frameworks since 2010. So the one on the right-hand side, business model canvas framework, came out back in 2010. And that's really used by hundreds and thousands of organizations to get aligned internally. And the interesting thing that we did within TELLUS is I took these models that we've been using on the business side and then applying those models together with some pricing frameworks. And that combination has really created a very strong way to look at your pricing, specifically value-based pricing. The left-hand side framework, value proposition canvas framework, that allows organizations to build, whether it's a minimum viable product or envisioning what should that solution that you're planning to provide to the marketplace, what should that do? And it's really important to, if we look at the framework on the right-hand side, the value prop and the market segmentation, you always start by looking at the solution side. What value are we as an organization going to provide to the marketplace? Mikko showed some examples from an internal use, whether it's providing a solution based on LLM, large language models, combining that with your internal solutions. So you always look at the right-hand side. And I always get this question, is it the market segment or the value prop that you should be looking at? It doesn't really matter. as long as the value prop that you are building to the market segment is something that is appealing. Now, what I want you to pay attention in this slide, look at number 9. That's really what Mikko was focused on, getting the cost structure and the costing of the solution in place. That's just one element of 9 elements. The other things that you have to be considering when building a solution for the marketplace, creating your own IP, what are the resources that we need? That's going to be reflected on the cost structure. What are the activities that we have to be focusing on, like the ongoing maintenance of the models that Mikko mentioned? I think AI is kind of challenging because it's not going to be staying stagnant. And if you are an ISV, independent software vendor, things will change on a regular basis. And when things change, it's also going to change your pricing models themselves. The left-hand side, I just want to emphasize, when you start building your solution and envisioning who you are building it for, you always look at the customer side of things. What are the chops, pains, and gains that you are trying to focus on when you get that solution to the marketplace? And then the left-hand side, the product. That's when you start building the features, functionality, sprint by sprint, and offering that to the marketplace. So you're really trying to look at the market solution fit when you build your solution. So I just wanted to bring these two frameworks because I think when you combine these with some pricing frameworks that we are using with our customers, it provides this foundational alignment for all the stakeholders, so you don't forget about the aspects of your business. Let's move to the next slide. So with this slide, I want to show you, we just looked at the business model and strategy, and what Mikko said in his presentation was really the question that you have to ask yourself: what is going to be the complexity of your solution, and how much customization are you going to apply when building it? And this is specifically for organizations that are building solutions for others to consume. And that brings then the question: if we provide an API consumption possibility for our customers, that's going to have an impact on the pricing, like Mikko showed. So you have to have restrictions for the solution that they're not going to consume. The pre-packaged solutions that Mikko showed in the beginning, those organizations had to base the pricing on specific assumptions. And let me tell you, I've run tens of different software pricing packaging workshops, and they're very hard to do because you will never get it right in the first place. There's always going to be some assumptions that you have to put in place, and then you iterate that pricing with time. And then operations, like Mikko said, there needs to be DevOps in place, support. You have to make sure that the solution performs, which then goes back into the sizing of your environment that you have to have in place. So the role of this picture is really to provide you with the idea that there's so many different dimensions, specifically if you want to productize your solution for the marketplace. Let's move to the next one. What we have done is to use this process, and it's in 3 stages. When you start building your pricing packaging, you have 3 steps. You have the positioning, you have the actual design of the packaging and the pricing, and then you have the validation, that you validate the assumptions that you did and designed on the design side. If you look at the left-hand side of positioning, you have to understand the competition, and what Mikko just said as well is that maybe some of these new AI solutions on the market, they're loss leaders. The organization is losing money every time somebody buys, but they're doing that because they want to get market share. So you have to really understand the trends on the market, because there's a lot of solutions coming out every day. Then you define your goals and sales objectives of the solution that you want to be getting to the marketplace. And then also understanding, if you think about the business model canvas framework, which I just mentioned and showed to you, you will have to define this for a specific set of market segment and the personas. When you move over to design, what we have done is to use the value proposition framework. There's a beautiful way when you design the customer jobs, you can then relate those jobs into feature functionality, and those feature functionality will then again be part of that packaging itself. And so combining the value proposition canvas framework with the building of the MVP and the bundles is a good way to do it. And the concept of value price metric, that's where you decide what is the metric going to be, how you charge. So the typical, is it going to be based on consumption? Is it going to be based on number of users? So that's the value metric. We typically suggest that you should really use value-based pricing in your pricing strategy. And then you might have some additional potential revenue streams. And then finally, validation. And one of the key things that we've seen with a lot of organizations that we work with, pricing in modern SaaS solutions, it's an ongoing activity. So you have to keep doing that because you're building additional new feature functionality, which is then consuming more and more of the resources from the public cloud. So you can't just give everything away with the same pricing that you did before. So there's some strategies related to that. So I just wanted to bring this picture here so you have an understanding that pricing packaging it's not just one thing. It all has to fit together as part of your business model. And then the final slide, Mikko. One of the key things that we, ACX and TELLUS does on a regular basis, we do a lot of research. So one of the key things that, for example, I've done now for years is to buy every book that exists on pricing. And I brought some of them here. I really like the work from Stefan Zhu, who has written several books together with additional writers going through the different aspects of pricing. So what we have done is to really pick the best pieces and build this packaging and workshop models that allows an organization to build the initial pricing and packaging model. So that concludes my side of things. I just wanted to make sure that this is just the kind of the surface. There's a lot of different pricing, packaging methods and strategies that will be applied together with these frameworks that I just showed to you. Thanks, Mikko.
Excellent. Thank you, Petri. So let's recap. So we have run now 3 different webinars. The first one was introduction. So if there were concepts that you're not familiar with, I recommend going back to our first webinar. If you're interested in building a new solution and want to understand how to do that, the second webinar talks about different ways of customizing the AI. And then in this webinar, we focused on the cost side. So firstly, the prepackaged AI solutions, how they can help you, and then customized AI solution. And 2 aspects there, like what are the relevant costs, and then where there is risk, where there is like unpredictability in the cost structure that might throw your business case off. All of this is built with our AI costing tool. If you are interested in exploring the costing or building of the AI or the strategy, reach out to us. We can help you that. The upcoming strategy season and the budgeting season, there is probably somebody in your organization who will be raising these topics, and it's good that the whole leadership team or whole product team is up to date and understands and can have a meaningful discussion about the AI, whether it's building commercial AI products to the market or incorporating AI as part of your IT and business processes. We will run a 4th webinar in 3 weeks' time. At that point, Europe has returned from the summer break, and there is some interesting stuff happening in Europe. So EU is the first entity that is like drafting AI legislation, and it will impact not only companies that are in Europe, but also companies who are planning to sell their offering to Europe. There are also some like Europe-specific things on the data residency, privacy, transparency, responsibility that we'll be exploring. We would like to hear what are your thoughts, what you would like to learn about, so we will incorporate them into this presentation. So this will happen on Wednesday, September 6th, and at the same time. And I think we have pretty much consumed the time that we have reserved for this webinar. So we want to thank everybody for joining. Please send us feedback. Please send us questions. We promise to answer your questions. And as mentioned, reach out to us if you want to start exploring the AI. Our ambition is to make AI approachable. There is a lot of highly technical material and hard to understand material out there. We have tried to digest that and lower the barrier of entry. So please reach out to us and we can help you with your journey.
And we will share this. Yeah, we will share this presentation as well. So if you have somebody that couldn't join, they will be able to see the presentation itself.
Good point. Yes. Yeah, we'll make a recording of this, and we have a recording for the previous presentation, so they are accessible and available for you. Thanks everybody for joining, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.